Chapter 673, Shock. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. Zhao Yuan waited until after Elder Fan Jing's sword chi surged out, almost reaching him from the opposite side. Then he made a quick move. Swoosh. Zhao Yuan drew his sword from its sheath. It hit its target first, although he had struck later. He had aimed a diagonal stab at Elder Fan Jing, breaking through her sword move. Within an instant, the snow mountain and the sword chi both disintegrated. They vanished into thin air, turning into a whiff of invisible genuine chi. Zhao Yuan's sword hit Elder Fan Jing between the eyebrows. Without batting an eye, he said, "You've lost." Elder Fan Jing shut her raging eyes. "What superb swordsmanship! I concede total defeat." Zhao Yuan put away his sword. His glance was still ice cold. He turned around and walked down the Colosseum, leaving behind only a silhouette. Another dark horse had emerged after Lin Yue's win. Before today, Zhao Yuan was an anonymous figure. Very few people had heard of him. This duel alone made him famous in the Yin and Yang sect. Zhao Yuan must have mastered the 4th level of Sword 1. He's brutally strong. He defeated Elder Fan Jing with a single move. His Tower of the Sword must be even more powerful than Xu Chenxing's. Yet another powerful opponent. These sword contests are getting more and more interesting. Will there be any more geniuses emerging? Zhao Yuan's performance was amazing. He made everyone remember him with a single sword move. He has reached the 5th level of Sword 1, Zhang Yuochen said to himself. Even Xu Chenxing, who had only mastered the 4th level, was already seen as a remarkable fighter among monks of the Fish Dragon realm. Zhao Yuan had mastered Sword 1 to the 5th level and was now a popular candidate for the top 10 spots. People soon realized that the next duel would be between Lin Yue and Zhao Yuan. Everyone looked forward to it. Two dark horses. Who would win in the end? Zhang Yuochen continued watching the dueling monks in the Colosseum. He learned from the strengths of their moves and eschewed their weaknesses. After that, he integrated them into his Tower of the Sword. The first round of the duels ended in the afternoon. There were 97 participants in Colosseum. Half of them had been eliminated, leaving just 46 participants to compete in the next round. The fierce confrontations continued. The duels in the second round were even fiercer. Xu Chenxing soon met his opponent, the number 53 participant, Tan Qingshan. Tan Qingshan was a very powerful saint's disciple. He had mastered Sword 1 to the 3rd level and had become a sword practitioner. Even with his current cultivation, Xu Chenxing took more than 100 moves to defeat Tan Qingshan. Everyone saw that Tan Qingshan could escape a life and death duel between the two. Had he not met Xu Chenxing, he would certainly be ranked in the top 100. The duel that everyone was anticipating soon arrived. Zhang Yuochen and Zhao Yuan walked up the Colosseum. All of the inner disciples below were cheering. Some yelled for Lin Yue, while others cheered for Zhao Yuan. Even participants who were saints' disciples were closely watching the duel. Dao Xuanqi of Law Enforcement Yard narrowed his aging eyes. He explained to Han Jiang beside him. Lin Yue is a very gifted lad. In the 2nd level mountain at Ancient Gods Mountain, he challenged 3 characters and managed to defeat 3 gatekeepers. But his cultivation is still too low. He's greatly disadvantaged since he is facing Zhao Yuan, who is a top challenger. Although Dao Xuanqi did not say it directly, the saint's disciples around him could all hear that he was not optimistic about Lin Yue's chances. Han Jiang smiled and said, "Zhao Yuan is indeed very powerful. He has reached the 5th level of Sword 1. If I were to face him, I can only admit defeat. In another 5 years, Lin Yue will surely surpass Zhao Yuan. But right now, he just isn't Zhao Yuan's match." Xu Chenxing remarked coldly. Dao Xuanqi, Han Jiang, and Xu Chenxing had all won 2 straight duels. They were already among the top 100. Their insights far surpassed any ordinary monks, and all 3 predicted a Lin Yue loss. Lin Yue had an 80 to 90% chance of losing the duel. Below Colosseum A, there was a roar of surprise. Heads turned and glanced at the door. Senior Sister Chi is here. Is she here to cheer for Lin Yue? The crowd divided like a parting sea. A ravishing woman in a cyan robe entered. Her figure was very slender and her skin was as fair as alabaster. She wore her straight, ebony hair down with a blue jade knot midway along its length. White holy light trippled around her body. Shifa was like a divine goddess on earth. Ordinary inner disciples could not make out her features due to the holy light. She exuded a hazy, enigmatic charm. All the disciples of the Yin and Yang sect knew that Lin Yue and Chifu were on more than friendly terms. It was such a critical duel, and Chifu had come in person to watch and cheer for Lin Yue. It showed that she valued him greatly. Zhao Yuan glanced at Chifu below the Colosseum. Astonishment flashed across his calm eyes. Even a man like him could not keep cool after seeing the goddess like Chifu. He became quite jealous of Lin Yue, who was standing opposite him. He was originally very collected, but now he experienced waves of emotion because of Chifu's arrival. His eyes staring at Zhang Yuochen turned intensely cold. Zhang Yuochen knew that Chifu was standing below the Colosseum. He smiled faintly. His mood was as unaffected and calm as ever. He stared at Zhao Yuan across him and said, "Lin Yue from Long Living Yard." Zhao Yuan took a deep breath and said, "Zhao Yuan from Tai King Palace." Zhao Yuan turned his arm quickly. With a swoosh, a dazzling sword radiance soared out from his scabbard, accompanied by the faint sound of wind and thunder. Boom! Hundreds of purple thunderbolts materialized within a 100-meter radius. They gathered into a sea of electric streaks, emanating terrifying power. If not for the array, the discharge of these thunderbolts would have disintegrated all the monks on the sacred mountain. The inner disciples below retreated backward, stunned. However, all 5 half-saints sitting on the Colosseum were frowning. Half-Saint Zixia said, "Zhao Yuan should easily win against Lin Yue, but he is too impatient. He wants to show off his powerful cultivation but instead put himself at a disadvantage." Half-Saint Jinglan said, "Lin Yue may not have the upper hand, but he looks so calm. If he can discover Zhao Yuan's weakness, there's a chance he would win." Lin Yue's own cultivation is still of the 4th change in the fish-dragon realm. The gap between them is massive. His chances of winning are minuscule. Even though Zhao Yuan's state of mind was inferior to Lin Yue's, he could still crush the latter with his powerful cultivation. The gap between their cultivations could not be closed by anything. Taixuan Thunderbolt. Zhao Yuan finally took the lead. He struck out at Zhang Yuochen with his sword. He waved his sword and hundreds of thunderbolts knotted together. They gave off crackling noises and snaked about, changing positions constantly. They struck out at Zhang Yuochen like long, thick lightning whips. Zhao Yuan was executing a mid-class ghost-level sword technique, the Taixuan sword technique. Taixuan sword technique was a technique unique to the Tai King Palace. If he could master it to the perfection of martial arts, he could mobilize the heaven and earth spiritual chi within a 50-kilometer radius. If he integrated the chi into his sword techniques, they would have unrivaled power. A half-saint from the Tai King Palace once executed the Taixuan sword technique and managed to cleave an entire city into halves with one sword move, leaving behind a 100-meter-wide gully. Zhao Yuan was currently displaying the Taixuan sword technique at big success. It caused a great commotion among the saints' disciples. Zhao Yuan has mastered the Taixuan sword technique, a mid-class ghost-level technique. I haven't even heard of him before. He's a really deep one. His Taixuan sword technique gives him many advantages even against Xu Chenxing. If his performance is up to scratch, Zhao Yuan will be strong enough to get into the top 10. The Taixuan sword technique was very famous within the Yin and Yang sect. Everyone who had mastered this technique was a top superior among saints' disciples. They would turn their noses up at other monks under the half-saint realm. Facing Zhao Yuan's powerful strike, Zhang Yuochen felt a great deal of pressure. Swish. Swish. Zhang Yuochen unsheathed his valley water sword and started drawing rapid circles in the air. He drew the thunderbolt whips into the inner circles and then directed them out of the Colosseum. If he allowed Zhang Yuochen to keep doing this, Zhao Yuan's sword strike would be dispelled in a single move. Zhao Yuan naturally would not give him a chance to do that. He snorted coldly and leapt like an earth dragon into the air, targeting Zhang Yuochen's front. He aimed a stab between Zhang Yuochen's eyebrows. At this moment, Zhang Yuochen faced attacks from both the thunderbolts and a sharp, stabbing sword. He was caught in between. Any other person would surely have lost. Even the participants below them all thought so. Predicting a swift outcome soon, Zhang Yuochen was still very calm. He brought the Valley Water Sword back in line with his body. He had now reached the human sword realm. Seeing Zhang Yuoquan's peculiar hand movement, a strange light shone from Chifa's beautiful eyes. She said to herself, has he had another breakthrough in his Tao of the Sword? Is this the 9th level of Sword 1? Half-Cent Xixia's eyes burst with dazzling light. He was very shocked. In the past 1,000 years, only a few dozen practitioners of the Fish Dragon realm had mastered all 10 levels of Sword 1 to the completion. The vast majority of these people later became Sword Saints. Now, Lin Yue had reached the 9th level of Sword 1 while still of the 4th change in the Fish Dragon realm. He was very likely to master all 10 levels to the completion. Half-Cent Zixia was not the only one who was stunned. Everyone who saw what was happening was thoroughly shocked.